Olympe de Gouges, born Marie Gouges, was a French playwright and political activist whose feminist and abolitionist writings reached a large audience. She began her career as a playwright in the early 1780s. As political tension rose in France, Olympe de Gouges became increasingly politically engaged. She became an outspoken advocate for improving the condition of slaves in the colonies of 1788. At the same time, she began writing political pamphlets. Today she is perhaps best known as an early feminist who demanded that French women be given the same rights as French men. In her Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen, she challenged the practice of male authority and the notion of male-female inequality. She was executed by guillotine during the Reign of Terror for attacking the regime of the revolutionary government and for her close relation with the Girondists. Biography. Marie Gouges was born into a petty bourgeois family in 1748 in Montauban, Quercy, in southwestern France. She believed that she was the illegitimate daughter of Jean-Jacques Lafrance, Marquis de Pompignan, and his rejection of her claims upon him may have influenced her passionate defense of the rights of illegitimate children. In 1765 she married Louis Aubray, a caterer, who came from Paris with the new intendant of the town. This was not a marriage of love. Gouges said in a semi-autobiographical novel, "I was married to a man I did not love and who was neither rich nor well-born. I was sacrificed for no reason that could make up for the repugnance I felt for this man." Her husband died a year later, and in 1770, she moved to Paris with her son, Pierre, and took the name of Olympe de Gouges. In 1773, according to her biographer Olivier Blanc, she met a wealthy man, Jacques Beatrix de Rosières, with whom she had a long relationship that ended during the Revolution. She was received in the artistic and philosophical salons, where she met many writers, including La Harpe Mercier and Chamfort, as well as future politicians such as Brissot and Condorcet. She usually was invited to the salons of Madame de Montesson and the Comtesse de Beauharnais, who also were playwrights. She also was associated with Masonic lodges, among them the Loge des Neuf Sœurs that was created by her friend Michel de Cubières. De Gouges lived with several men who supported her financially. She strove to move among the aristocracy and to abandon her provincial accent. In 1784, the year that her putative biological father died, she began her career as a public intellectual, and over the remaining 9 years of her life she wrote some 40 works, essays, manifestos, literary treatises, political pamphlets and socially conscious plays. In 1784, she wrote the anti-slavery plays Amour and Mirza. For several reasons, the play was not performed until 1789. De Gouges published it, however, as Zamour et Mirza, ou le naufrage in 1788. It was performed as Le Esclavage des Négresses in December of 1789, but shut down after 3 performances. Subsequently, it was published in 1792 under the title Le Esclavage des Noirs. She also wrote on such gender-related topics as the right of divorce and argued in favor of sexual relations outside of marriage. As an epilogue to the 1788 version of her plays Amour et Mirza, she published Réflexions sur les hommes négres. In 1790, she wrote a play, Le Marché des Noirs, which was rejected by the Comédie Française. The text was burned after her death. In 1808, the Abbé Grégoire included her on his list of the courageous people who pleaded the cause of les négresses, a passionate advocate of human rights. Olympe de Gouges greeted the outbreak of the revolution with hope and joy, but soon became disenchanted when égalité was not extended to women. In 1791, she became part of the Society of the Friends of Truth, an association with the goal of equal political and legal rights for women. Also called the Social Club, members sometimes gathered at the home of the well-known women's rights advocate, Sophie de Condorcet. Here, de Gouges expressed, for the first time, her famous statement, "A woman has the right to mount the scaffold." She must possess equally the right to mount the Speaker's platform, the Declaration of the Rights of Women, that same year. In response to the Declaration of the Rights of Man of the Citizen, she wrote the Declaration des droits de la femme et de la citoyenne. This was followed by her Contrat social, proposing marriage based upon gender equality. She became involved in almost any matter she believed to involve injustice. She opposed the execution of Louis XVI of France, partly out of opposition to capital punishment and partly because she preferred a relatively tame and living king to the possibility of a rebel regency in exile. This earned her the ire of many hardline Republicans, even into the next generation, such as the comment by the 19th-century historian Jules Michelet, a fierce apologist for the revolution, who wrote, "She allowed herself to act and write about more than one affair that her weak head did not understand." Michelet opposed any political participation by women and thus disliked de Gouges' arrest and execution. As the revolution progressed, she became more and more vehement in her writings. On the 2nd of June 1793, the Jacobins arrested her allies, the Girondins, imprisoned them, and sent them to the guillotine in October. Finally, her Pour les Tourons, ou le salut de la patrie, par un voyageur aérien of 1793, led to her arrest. That piece demanded a plebiscite for a choice among three potential forms of government. The first, unitary republic; the second, a federalist government; or the third, a constitutional monarchy. After she was arrested, the commissioners searched her house for evidence. When they could not find any in her home, she voluntarily led them to the storehouse where she kept her papers. It was there that the commissioners found an unfinished play titled La France sauvée ou le tyran détenu. In the first act, Marie Antoinette is planning defense strategies to retain the crumbling monarchy and is confronted by revolutionary forces, including the Gouges herself. The first act ends with the Gouges lecturing the Queen for having seditious intentions and on how to lead her people. Both de Gouges and her prosecutor used this play as evidence in her trial. The prosecutor claimed that Olympe's depictions of the Queen threatened to stir up sympathy and support for the royalists, whereas de Gouges stated that the play showed that she had always been a supporter of the revolution. She spent 3 months in jail without an attorney, trying to defend herself. The presiding judge denied de Gouges her legal right to a lawyer, on the grounds that she was more than capable of representing herself. It seems as though the judge based this argument on de Gouges' tendency to represent herself in her writings. Through her friends, she managed to publish 2 texts. Olympe de Gouges au Tribunal Révolutionnaire, where she related her interrogations, in her last work, Une patriote persécutée, where she condemned the terror. The Jacobins, who already had executed a king and queen, were in no mood to tolerate any opposition from the intellectuals. Olympe was executed only a month after Condorcet had been proscribed and just 3 days after the Girondin leaders had been guillotined. Her body was disposed of in the Madeleine Cemetery. Olympe's last moments were depicted by an anonymous Parisian who kept a chronicle of events. Yesterday, at 7 o'clock in the evening, a most extraordinary person called Olympe de Gouges, who held the imposing title of Woman of Letters, was taken to the scaffold, while all of Paris, while admiring her beauty, knew that she didn't even know her alphabet. She approached the scaffold with a calm and serene expression on her face, and forced the guillotine's furies, which had driven her to this place of torture, to admit that such courage and beauty had never been seen before. That woman had thrown herself in the revolution, body and soul. But having quickly perceived how atrocious the system adopted by the Jacobins was, she chose to retrace her steps. She attempted to unmask the villains through the literary productions which she had printed and put up. They never forgave her, and she paid for her carelessness with her head. Legacy. After her death, says Olivier Blanc, her son General Pierre Aubry de Gouges went to Guyana with his wife and 5 children. He died in 1802, after which his widow attempted to return to France, but died aboard the ship during her return. In Guadeloupe, the two young daughters were married, Marie Hyacinthe Genevieve de Gouges to an English officer, and Charlotte de Gouges to an American politician Robert Selden Garnett, a member of the United States Congress who had plantations in Virginia. Hence, many English and American families have Olympe de Gouges as their ancestor. On 6 March 2004, the junction of the Routes Béranger, Charles, Turenne and Franche-Comté in Paris was proclaimed the Place Olympe de Gouges. The square was inaugurated by the mayor of the 3rd arrondissement, Pierre Aidenbaum, along with the first deputy mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo. The actress Véronique Genest read an excerpt from the Declaration of the Rights of Woman. 2007 French presidential contender Ségolène Royal expressed the wish that the remains of de Gouges be moved to the Panthéon. However, her remains, as those of the other victims of the Reign of Terror, have been lost through burial in communal graves, so any reburial would be ceremonial. Writings. Olympe de Gouges wrote her famous Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen shortly after the French Constitution of 1791 was created. In the same year, she was alarmed that the Constitution, which was to promote equal suffrage, did not address, nor even consider, women's suffrage. The Constitution gave that right only to men. It also did not address key issues such as legal equality in marriage, the right of a woman to divorce her spouse if he abused her, or a woman's right to property and custody of the children. So she created a document that was to be, in her opinion, the missing part of the Constitution of 1791, in which women would be given the equal rights they deserve. Throughout the document, it is apparent to the reader in that Gouges had been influenced by the philosophy of the Enlightenment, whose thinkers, using scientific reasoning, critically examine and criticize the traditional morals and institutions of the day. Gouges opens up her declaration with a witty, and at times sarcastically bitter, introduction in which she asks men why they have chosen to subjugate women as a lesser sex. Her opening statement put rather bluntly, "Man, are you capable of being just?" It is a woman who poses the question. You will not deprive her of that right at least. The latter part of the statement shows her assertion that men have been absurdly depriving women of what should be common rights. So she sarcastically asks if men will find it necessary to take away even her right to question. Gouges begins her long argument by stating that in nature the sexes are forever mingled, cooperating in harmonious togetherness. There she uses Enlightenment logic. If in nature the equality and the cooperation of the two sexes achieves harmony, so should France achieve a happier and more stable society if women are given equality among men. After her opening paragraph she proceeds to her declaration, which she asks be reviewed and decreed by the National Assembly in their next meeting. Her preamble explains that the reason for contemporary public misfortune and corrupt government is due to the oppression of women and their rights. The happiness and well-being of society would only be ensured once the rights of women were equally important as those of men, especially in political institutions. In her document, Gouges establishes the rights of women on the basis of their equality to men, that they are both human and capable of the same thoughts. Gouges also promotes the rights of women by emphasizing differences women have to men, however, differences that men ought to respect and take notice of. She argues that women are superior in duty as well as in courage during childbirth, addressing characteristics that set women apart from men. She adds what she probably thought was logical proof to her argument that men are not superior to women, and therefore, women are deserving at least of the same rights. Her declaration bears the same outline and context as the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, but Gouges either changes the word man to woman, or adds for both women and men in Article 2. The resemblance is exact to the previous declaration, except that she adds, especially, before, the right to the resistance of oppression, emphasizing again how important it is to her to end the oppression of women, and that the government should recognize this and take action. A main difference between the two declarations is that the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen emphasizes the protection of the written law, while the Declaration of the Rights of Women and the Female Citizen emphasizes protection of the law and natural laws. Gouges emphasizes that these rights of women always have existed, that they were created at the beginning of time by God, that they are natural and true, and they cannot be oppressed. Article 10 contains the famous phrase, "Woman has the right to mount the scaffold, she must equally have the right to mount the rostrum. If women have the right to be executed, they should have the right to speak." She modifies Article 11 to say that a woman has the right to give her children the name of their father even if they be out of wedlock or the father may have left her. Gouges is passionate about this because she believed that she herself was an illegitimate child. In her postscript, Gouges exhorts women to wake up and discover that they have these rights. She assures them that reason is on their side. Gouges asks, what have women gained from the French Revolution? She states that the answer is nothing, except to be marked with yet more disdain. She exclaims that women should no longer tolerate this, they should step up, take action, and demand the equal rights they deserve. Gouges calls the notion that women are lesser beings an out-of-date concept. In this, she shows strongly her Enlightenment perspective to break from old, illogical traditions that are now archaic. She asserts that to revoke women's right to partake in political life is also out of date. Her last paragraph is titled A Social Contract Between Men and Women, taking a leaf from Rousseau's book. The contract asks for communal cooperation. The wealth of a husband and wife should be distributed equally. Property should belong to both and to the children, whatever bed they come from. If they are divorced, their land should be divided equally. She called this the marriage contract. Gouges also proposed to allow a poor man's wife to have her children adopted by a wealthy family. This would advance the community's wealth and reduce disorder. Near the end of the contract, Gouges requests creation of a law to protect widows and girls from men who make false promises. This, perhaps, is the most important issue she deals with in France. In the postscript section of her document, Gouges describes the consequences for a woman who is left by an unfaithful husband, who is widowed with no fortune to her name, and of young, inexperienced girls who are seduced by men who leave them with no money and no title for their children. Gouges therefore demands a law that will force an unfaithful or unscrupulous man to fulfill his obligations to such a woman, or to at least to pay a reimbursement equal to his wealth. One of the last arguments in her document is directed to men who still see women as lesser beings. The foolproof way to evaluate the soul of women is to join them to all the activities of man. If man persists against this, let him share his fortune with woman by the wisdom of the laws. She challenges men that, if they wish, they may evaluate scientifically the consequences of joining man and woman in equal political rights. She wrote numerous other works, and the Olympe de Gouges.eu website provides translations of many of her pamphlets. Denied a place in the powerful circles of her day, she found her political voice by writing an astonishing number of pamphlets and posters that she freely disseminated around Paris. Her texts chart her battles against injustice and inequality, her belief that solidarity and cooperation should predominate, her hatred of dictatorships and the corrupting influence of power, her profound pacifism, her respect for humankind, her love of nature, and, of course, her desire that women be allowed a worthwhile role in society. She pleaded against slavery and the death penalty, dreamt of a more equal society and proposed intelligent taxation, plans to enable wealth to be more fairly divided. She called for a form of welfare state, trial by jury and reasonable divorce laws to protect women and children from penury.